Hi, it's Carolyn. I'm here to help you learn how to bake and decorate amazing cakes, and in this video I'm going to show you how to ice this blue ombre buttercream cake using a cake comb. Now I'm starting with my tiers already baked, filled, and they are crumb coated and in the refrigerator waiting to be decorated. I have videos showing you how I do that process and I will link that in the description. So let's get started. So I'm starting with two shades of American buttercream. I have one that's lighter blue and one that's a medium blue. I did a mixture of this cornflower blue and delphinium blue and a little bit of royal. And I have this cake comb here. I will link that in the description. I'm going to run it under hot water to heat up the metal. And then I'm going to take a paper towel and dry it off. I'm going to do this off camera, so you're not going to see me do it. But I'm going to do that every time I swipe the icing off of the cake. Now I got my crumb coated cake out of the refrigerator so the icing is solid. And I am spreading this medium blue icing around that bottom third of the cake, making sure it's going all the way down to the cake board. And I want to make sure that is an equal thickness the whole way around, about 1/4 of an inch thick. Then I'm taking a little bit of the medium blue icing and some of that light blue icing in a bowl, and I'm mixing it together, but not completely. I'm just trying to make it so the transition from light to dark isn't so harsh. So I'm doing that combined icing around the middle third, and then I'm taking that light blue icing and spreading it around the top of the cake and then also on the top third of the cake. So I want to make sure, like I always do when I ice the cake, that the icing comes over the top edge of the cake so I can level it off. And now I'm running that blade under the hot water and wiping it dry with the paper towel. I'm bringing my left hand all the way to the right side of that turntable and I'm unwinding it so I can unwind it in one fell swoop. You don't want to do a lot of little turns with this. You're going to make tons of marks in the icing. And you can see after one rotation, there's still some imperfections in here. So I wipe the icing off of the blade and I'm heating it up again under the hot water and I'm wiping it clean. And then I'm taking another pass on here. Do you see I am holding that blade at a 45-degree angle against the cake? That way it's going to smooth it out a little better. Here's a better angle. Do you see how I'm holding it at like a 45-degree angle so I can take this swipe around the cake and I do one fell swoop? This way I don't have a lot of marks in the icing from that blade, and you can see how smooth it is. When you're doing this scraping process, you only want to do it about 2 or 3 times because the icing is going to start to crust and then it's going to make it look worse rather than better. Now I want to remove some of this excess icing that's sticking over the top of the cake. There's a little too much sticking off the top. Do you see how I'm pushing the spatula in so I don't pull the icing away from the cake? I don't always do this, but if there's too much icing sticking over the top, then I will carefully just try to scrape some of it off before I do the leveling process. It just makes it a little easier. So now I am going to level the cake and I'm sitting eye level with it, and I'm starting in the back where that cake comb made a little mark. That's going to be the back of my cake. I'm holding that spatula level and I'm pushing this icing back. I'm actually using that top line that the cake comb made as a guide to make sure that this is an equal height. So I am dipping that in hot water, wiping it off with my paper towel, and then I'm aligning the back half of my spatula with the line that I previously made and using the front half to scrape off that excess icing. And I have a video where I go into detail on how I ice smooth buttercream cakes, and I will link that in the description for you. And then after I finish it one time, I want to go back and really refine this line. So I'm just holding my spatula perfectly horizontal and I'm just trying to get a really crisp, sharp edge and make sure that it is perfectly level. This does take a little bit of time and patience, but it's worth it. It makes it look so much better. And then once I have that done, I'm putting a little bit of water on the very top. You have to spread it very quickly. If you let that water sit, it's going to discolor the icing and you don't want to do that. So I'm making sure that I'm not spreading it all the way to the edge. I do not want it to drip down the cake. It's happened to me so many times. If it drips down the cake, it's going to make a mark and it's so annoying to remove. So what I like to do, I'm running that spatula under the hot water and using a little bit of water that's on the spatula to smooth it from the outer edges in. This way I'm not going to distort the outer edge of the cake and keep it perfectly symmetrical. And look how beautiful this looks. I'm going to put that back in the refrigerator while I start on this middle tier. So again, I have some darker blue icing that I'm spreading around the bottom third of the cake, and then taking that darker blue icing mixed with that icing that's a medium blue that was on the bottom of the top tier, and that is going around the center of the cake. And then on the top, I'm using that medium blue color that was on the bottom of the top tier, so it's going to transition seamlessly. And then again, I'm making that icing stick over the very top of the cake, and I heated that up. I wiped off the water, and then I'm holding it at an angle and just unwinding my turntable once. Then I'm going to remove that excess icing and then repeat the process just like I did before. So this time I went over this about 3 times, and look how pretty that looks. Now I'm going to do the leveling process again, like I said, holding my spatula perfectly horizontal and trying to get that nice sharp edge. And then once I do that, I'm going to refine that top edge and make it really nice and crisp. And then once that is done, I am going to get a little bit of water on the top like I did before and spread that out, and then start from the outer edges and press it in to make sure that I don't distort that top edge of the cake. And then there's a little imperfection here. I want to put that back in the refrigerator, and I will fill that in once this icing is cold. So that looks really good. Let's put that back in the fridge and do the same thing for the bottom tier. Now I'm using the darkest icing on that bottom third, and then I'm mixing the darker blue with a lighter blue and doing that around the middle third. And then the color that goes on the top half and the top of the cake is the same color that was on the bottom of the middle tier. And then again, I'm taking my cake comb and then just taking a couple swipes around. And like I said, you only want to do 2 or 3 swipes, but after 2 swipes, there are still imperfections in this icing. So I just want to use the hot metal blade one more time to kind of smooth this out. 2 or 3 times is all that it takes. And look how much better that looks. Now this cake drum is super messy, so I'm just scraping some of that icing off with my spatula, and then I'm leveling off the top of the cake like I showed before. And look how beautiful this is. I'm going to put all those back in the refrigerator overnight. The next day I'm going to stack it. I always wash my hands, and I'm getting this out of the fridge. That icing is cold and hard. I'm not going to mess it up. I want to find the front of the cake that looks most symmetrical and doesn't have that line from where the comb stopped in the back. I'm taking a wet paper towel and cleaning that cake board. And I have to cut my straws. My straws are going to be as high as that ruler. So I'm just holding it behind the ruler and making sure that I mark these so I know where to cut this. I'm going to cut that off and put that piece that had the marker on it in the trash. And now I'm going to make sure that it is level after getting all the straws in there. And I'm going to spread a little bit of icing down on there. And then I'm going to get that middle tier out of the refrigerator. Remember, this icing is cold and hard. I don't want to mess it up. I'm trying to find where the front of the cake is. Again, that's going to look the most symmetrical. I'm just going to put a little arrow on the top so I know where the front of the cake is. Now I have this spatula. I'm going to link this in the description. It's very thin. I'm running it under hot water when icing starts to stick to it. And I'm running this all around the bottom of that cake so I can separate the icing from the board. If I don't do this, some of that icing might stick to the board and it will create a big void that I would have to fill in with icing, and I just am trying to avoid that. So I'm removing that from that circle and I'm stacking this on top. Again, remember this icing is cold and hard, so I can handle this without messing it up. I'm going to make sure that it is level, and then again I'm going to repeat the process that I just did. Now I have a video where I go into complete detail on how I stack cakes, and I'm going to link that in the description. It looks like these straws were cut a little too tall. Do you see how they're sticking out over the top of the cake? I don't want that. So I trimmed all of the other straws just a little bit so they would countersink down and be level with the top of the cake. And now if this happens to you, you can take some tweezers and just lift them up just slightly. And then I'm taking scissors and just trimming a little bit off of the top. That way I push them back down and they're flush with the cake. I'm getting a little bit more icing down. And then again, repeating the process. I got that top tier out of the refrigerator. I'm running the spatula underneath. I want to find the front of the cake that looks most symmetrical. And then I'm going to remove that from that cardboard circle and carefully lift it up and place it on the top, making sure I had to wash my hands because I had some icing on there, and I want to make sure that it is center. Now I sharpened that wooden dowel in a pencil sharpener only used for dowels. Ever for pencils, and I'm putting that dowel all the way down to the countertop and then bringing my snips just down a little bit from the top of the cake, and I'm trimming that. And then I'm pushing that down. It's going to stop where that top cardboard circle is underneath the top tier, and then I'm hammering it through there, push it down. It's going to stop where the cardboard circle is underneath the middle tier. Sorry, I'm a little out of frame with my hammer. And then I'm going to hammer this all the way down. The sharp end of that dowel is piercing through those cardboard circles, and then I'm going to countersink it all the way down into the cake drum. So once it stops, it's going to hit the countertop, and then it is countersunk down into the drum, so it's not going to shift. And then I'm just filling in that little hole with a little bit of buttercream icing. And now I'm putting this on a turntable, and we have to fill in the little void here. Remember I told you earlier I would fill this in once that icing is hard? It's just so much easier. That way you don't mess up the rest of the cake. And I'm just carefully taking a palette knife and filling that in. And then I have some icing in this icing bag, and it's the same color as that bottom section of the cake. It's just that it sat a little bit, and when it sits, it deepens. So it's going to look like it's a little bit off, but that's okay. And then I have a tapered spatula, and I am just scraping off this excess icing here. And I know I sound like a broken record, but this cake is cold. The icing is solid, so this is why I'm not messing it up. So I'm just trying to remove as much excess icing as I can. Any icing that's sticking out from scraping it, I'm just trying to remove it. So I'm just working in little sections, trying to make this seem as least noticeable as possible. And then I washed my hands, and I'm taking my pinky and that was dipped in some water, and I'm just trying to smooth this out. My pinky was the perfect size and it fit in there, so I thought that worked out perfectly. And then I'm doing the same thing between the middle and the bottom tier. I'm taking that same color icing that goes in between both tiers, taking my tapered spatula and scraping off the excess, and then scraping any part that's sticking out of the top and smoothing out the same way that I did before. And I'm going to take my wet pinky and smooth that out. And here is the super cool blue ombre cake. So there you go. How cool is this cake? I just love this ombre design. And the trick is to get two different colors of the icing and kind of mix them together so there's a smooth transition. If you don't mix them together, there's going to be a noticeable difference between both of the colors and they won't blend together as smoothly. And also, I just want to mention, whenever I'm using cake combs like this, I prefer to add a tiny bit more liquid to my American buttercream. I find that it's smooths a lot easier and there's no bubbles or pock marks that form in the icing when I thin it out just a little bit. But you don't want to add too much liquid, just enough so you can really smooth it. I like my icing to be a creamy peanut butter consistency. So this cake on the inside, the top tier is a 3-layer knot torted 6-inch. The middle tier is a 3-layer knot torted 8-inch. And the bottom tier is a 3-layer knot torted 10-inch. And I have a video where I talk about when I tort and when I don't tort my cakes, and I will link that in the description. It feeds 80 to 90 people. Now, she didn't want any decorations on this. She bought the topper herself and was going to decorate it at the venue. So I think that's it. What new techniques did you learn in this video? I would love to know. Leave it in the comments below. And just a reminder, I have ebooks with all of the recipes that I use. I have my signature scratch pound cake recipes, my favorite doctored cake mix recipes, all of my buttercream filling and icing recipes, along with my favorite numbers and my favorite fonts. So they will all be linked in the description. And I also have a Cake Academy membership program where I can help you elevate your cakes to the next level. There are 3 tiers to this program. The base tier is called the Cake Pop tier. And in that tier, you get free and discounted extras being those ebooks that I just mentioned, along with early access to my YouTube content and exclusive access to content that I make just for my Cake Academy members. And the top 2 tiers have all of those benefits, along with access to my exclusive Facebook group. And in that group, I go live. I teach buttercream classes and fondant classes. We do Zoom meetings on cake critiques and customer complaints and pricing. I post all of the pictures of the cakes that I make, along with how much I charged. And we are having so much fun in this group. I would love to have you aboard. All that information is in the description. Please like this video if you liked it, and if you're enjoying my tutorials, I would be so grateful if you could buy me a coffee. My link is down below. And I would love it if you would keep in touch on socials, and you can check out my website. And if you want to stick around, you can watch this video next and hit subscribe and the bell if you haven't already. Thank you so much for watching. I love you guys. And remember, it's cake, have fun, and go birds. I will see you on the next one. Bye.